under 18, so I feel responsible as a parent, as their parent, as such, whilst they're playing football. And they were racially abused by parents of the opposition, and you know, I have no reason to doubt what my players said. I didn't hear it; it was across the other side of the pitch. But they were being called monkeys, and there were monkey actions towards them, as what was an absolutely brilliant game of football. This is the worst thing about it. It was a brilliant game of football that they were playing. It was a top of the table clash. It ended 4-4. We scored with 2 minutes to go to make it 4-3. They scored in what seemed like an eternity of stoppage time for some reason or another. And they went mad and you know, racially abused young players of 16 and 15 years of age. We lost the case, but during this period of time, personally, there was anger, extreme anger, because there were allegations flying back and forward on social media as well. There was frustration. There was my mental state, and this is why I've agreed to do this interview, is particularly about the mental state of mind. And my mental state was going all over the place, in terms of feeling that I'd let the players down, feeling that I couldn't do enough for the players, the hurt that being racially abused brings, and it caused me to step away from, you know, the level of coaching that I really, really enjoyed, to be totally honest. And many people may say, well, why did you do that? Because I felt I was becoming a target. I felt that because I worked for Kick It Out as well, people were kind of using it as a way of trying to get me in trouble as someone who works for that organisation. And I felt it was the right thing to do, ultimately. I just felt it was the right thing to do. Personally, I was racially abused about 15. I think I was about 15. And, you know, when I was growing up, I didn't visualize colour in a way of difference. You know, my friends were from all different backgrounds. We had fun. They were friends, you know, Greek friends, Asian friends, black friends, white friends, you know, Welsh, Irish. It didn't matter. We were friends, and football was our common denominator, and the love of football was that common denominator. I remember I played for the district, and we were playing up in Middlesbrough in the Nationals quarterfinals. I'd never really been away from home, to be totally honest. So, you know, to travel up to Middlesbrough and to play at the old Ayrton Park, which was the old, obviously, Middlesbrough Football Club. And the night before, we went out for a bite to eat, and our team was predominantly black anyway. And I remember we were sitting down. I can't remember what I was eating. It might have been well, probably pizza. It's the meal of champions, isn't it? And this kid, I don't know, he was about 3, 4. I was sitting with my teammates. I'm not even going to describe them as anything else. They were just my teammates. And he's come up. He's obviously left the table that he was sitting with his parents and stood right in like my eye line and just stared at me. And he stared at me for what seemed like forever. And, you know, this little 3, 4-year-old is making a 15-year-old uncomfortable. I just didn't know what he was staring at. And he stared and he stared, and it seemed like forever. And when his mum came along and pulled him away, I realised that he was staring at the colour of my skin, because he'd obviously never seen anyone, you know, that was black, that was brown, that was different to white. And it made me consciously think. And then a week later, and this is why these things are so clear in my head, many other things about my youth are not, but this is, I was crossing a road. I just bought my mum a birthday card. I didn't have much money at all, ever. And buying my mum a birthday card was an absolute achievement for me. You know, it may be something that other people think, oh, you know what, you couldn't afford a birthday card. It was an absolute achievement for me. And I was bouncing home. I literally was bouncing because I was so proud of myself. You know, it's a birthday card for my mum. And what I'd done is I'd bounced across a road when really I should have stopped to the pavement and waited. You know what the Green Cross Code man says? And the guy pulled up, got out of his car, took the envelope, tore it up, threw it on the floor, and said, "You black CUNT." And honestly, out of everything that has ever happened to me in my life, that, in terms of, describing colour, that's the thing that stands out. It broke my heart. It meant that I couldn't go home and give my mum a card. I was then being identified by the colour of my skin. I was also being, a word that and that's probably why I hate that word, is because the C word that was used against me. I was crestfallen. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't talk to people. I didn't even know if it was racial abuse. I'm going to be totally honest, but it stayed with me. 40 years later, I tell the story time and time again, because it's the two stories very close together are the ones that have had the most impact on me. And I've got to be honest, made me feel horrible about myself, made me question the colour of my skin and why someone would target the colour of my skin as a way of abuse. And it sends you into a space that's not nice. It's not, describe the feelings are going to be tough. As a young lad, I've just questioned the colour of my skin, and anyone that has to question the colour of their skin, it must be an extreme circumstance, and it took me a while to get out of that, get it mentally out of my mind. Although, again, retelling the story as if it was yesterday means that it's always remained in my mind. And yes, I've had other battles. I've been on a pitch and there's been banana thrown at my team, and the lad who the banana was thrown at was running into the crowd. It's non-league games, so it's not a massive crowd, but he's running into the crowd to go and sort it all out and stuff like that. And we've had monkey chants, and all those I used to brush off. I used to just brush it off as nothing, as whatever. But that incident that was not related to football is the one that kind of sticks and stays in my mind. And then, like I said, the reason why ultimately my coaching career that lasted 30 years came to an end was because of basically racial discrimination as well. So, really at the end of my life, and, at the end of my life I'm still here, gratefully. But, at the last stages of my coaching career, it's had a massive, massive impact on me as an individual.
For me, one of the saddest parts of that was when there was kind of two common denominators when you were speaking about the coaching career and what happened to you with the 15, 16-year-olds and what happened with the guy in the car. There seemed to be a point where you questioned if you'd done something wrong yourself by just purely being how you are, which seems to be like a horrible state of mind. But when I suppose when the infrastructure and support isn't necessarily there, then it leads you to question yourself.
I think that's the thing, and you could ask many a person who has been racially abused, and obviously racial abuse comes in all different shapes or forms. One of the first things that happens is you question, what have you done? What have I done? Why would they do? You know what I mean? Why? There's a lot of whys in there, but you question yourself. And I don't care how mentally strong people are, one of the first things you do is question, what have I done? And that is a really tough question to overcome as well, to be totally honest, because that delves you into all different spaces of, your appearance and, your mannerisms and just the very existence of you, who you are in whatever skin you're in. It's a real tough one. And it's one that I believe that, at times when we see it now, we witness racial abuse now, and the players who have all been racially abused, I'm not quite sure everyone understands those other elements around it. It's not just the language, it's not just the aggression behind it, it's not just the word. I like to talk about the impact, and an individual who then shuts themselves behind a closed door and does all that like questioning part of it, and I don't think that part of it is appreciated enough, to be totally honest.
Leon, I know you wanted to add a couple of things on this, didn't you?
Yeah, I had a few things that when me and Jake have been looking into stuff that we've noticed a few things, but you've gone into some detail about the abuse you've had and how it's affected you in your past. Kind of links into one of the things that we had is, unfortunately, your own son has been a victim of it as well, recently as well. And we hear a lot about players being racially abused in the game. Unfortunately, it's on the rise at the moment. I know it's been a rise of 50% recently, but we don't really hear much about how it actually affects the players and their families. So would you be able to maybe give us a little bit of insight on that time for you and your son?
Well, it's funny because the recent one, which would have been, I think the one you're talking about was from the first game of the season, where an Everton fan racially abused him. Andros didn't know. I didn't know. And it only came to light when a journalist contacted me in February, I think it was, and said that there was a court case going on today. Have I got comment? And I was like, no, what are you talking about? He said, well, Andros was racially abused against Everton. And I had to think back, when was Everton? And Everton was the first game of the season. So it's now February. Messaged Andros, did you know he was racially abused at home? So no, I didn't have a clue. But it was the great work of a steward who, you know, saw the guy, identified the guy, got him thrown out, and then that procedure took its own course. I'm shocked that we weren't involved in that. I'm shocked that, you know, Andros wasn't made aware and that I didn't know, if you want me to be honest, just in my working capacity. But that's what happened. Andros is a very much a brush it off and continue kind of guy. Yeah, so that's the way he is, and he's never had it directly in his face, you know. I take things more to heart, you know. I'm the person, not just for my own son, but also for all the players that have told me about their experiences, and I go through the experience. I live the experience with them, you know. So if you're telling me that someone's called you the N-word, I'm living that experience. And appreciating what you have gone through then and what you continue to go through when you finally get an outcome, which more often than not is 6 months later. You know, that is a player living with the period of 6 months, of the questions, of the answers, of the self-doubt. And, you know, that's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. There's a couple of ongoing situations also with players in the Championship. I won't name them, but they're from the first game of the season. We're now in what? And I know the pandemic has started and this was in March, but in March, it wasn't resolved, you know? So one of those situations was on a family member. And I know it's caused the most amount of stress within that family because they just want to put it to bed. In the end, it's like, well, listen, can't be bothered if, you know, whatever happens now. But that's not right, because whilst you're going out playing, training and whatever else, there's something in the back of your mind where you're still thinking about it. There's something where actually you think to yourself, is this going to happen to me again? You know, so it's quite demanding. If you're going through a process, it's absolutely consumes every minute of your day. Yes, you may be able to push it to the back of your mind sometimes because life goes on, but you know at some stage you're going to have to deal with it and deal with the consequences of it as well and the outcome. And I don't think there's enough focus put on that area of it. And like I said, Andros is more of a, you know what, I didn't hear it, whatever. If people want to do that, they do that. I'm more of a, it's a dagger, you know, and maybe that's from my younger experiences, but that's how I take it. If I'm like that, I'm quite sure that, you know, players and their families, you know, have had to, you know, there's another case where the racial abuse directed at the player in the championship, in the League One, was with his family sat probably 10 rows down. So they could hear the racial abuse being leveled at their son, their brother, their husband, do you know what I mean? Now, I don't know if I could control myself. I think I've got a unique ability of shutting things out, but I don't know if I could control myself if I heard racial abuse directed at my son without getting up and going face to face with someone. But I know what that also brings as well. You know, the difficult thing about that, and listen, I'm going to say this, being a black man, you go and challenge people, the accusation then comes back on you. You know, we've experienced it on more than enough times to know that actually, oh, he's being aggressive. What's all that about? Oh, look at the way that he's approached that, you know, and then all of a sudden the story's about you, not about the original offence. You know, but we have to get to a stage where we are able to challenge these situations. And if it is about a family member or whatever else, I'm sorry, enough's enough. Like you said, Leon, you know, the stats have been on the rise for the last 7 years. We're getting no better at dealing with this situation and challenging it, you know. So that's you know, that's unfortunately the way that it is.
Just to talk about you've talked about your experiences and how they've hurt you. So how heartbreaking is it when it happens to a family member, when it happens to your son? And because you know how you went through it, and you say Andros can kind of brush it off, but there must be a concern there. And you're talking about with teammates, with family members in the stand as well. It's not just the individual, but the others as well. And how heartbreaking is that for you from a father's perspective?
Listen, I'm going to be like anything about discrimination, racial discrimination, or whatever. You know, I'm in contact with so many good groups and good people. One, I do take it on as a father, of course, but I take it on as an advocate to you know, for the elimination of discrimination. You know, and I probably wear too much on my heart. I probably take too much on my shoulders. I probably think that I can do the best for everyone that I can do and take it all on board, and then feel like I've let them down when, you know, they haven't got the desired result. The ultimate, you know, aim is to get the person who has victimized them facing matters in a court of law, or, do you know what I mean, banning orders and stuff like that. And I'm gutted, you know, I'm gutted when things like, listen, there was a Jonathan Lecco situation this season, Charlton versus Leeds. And, you know, Casilia, the Leeds goalie, is found guilty. The minute I knew about the situation, I rung the football club. Charlton, Jonathan was on loan there, and rung the football club and offered my support. That's the thing that I do, you know, offered my support to two people. When the final case came out 6 months later and Kassir was found guilty, and Jonathan spoke about obviously his experience of 6 months, he said that he was felt that let down by PFA and by Kick It Out. And when he said kick it out, it's basically me. I was let down what? Oh, they never contact me. They never, and he's openly done this in an interview. So I got on the phone straight to Charlton and said, I've just seen Jonathan Lecco's interview. What do you mean we never contacted him? I contacted two people who said they would pass on the message to Jonathan, and then if Jonathan needed me, they'll let me know. So basically they failed in their obligation, which then makes me look really bad. But I took that one personally. I absolutely took it personally, where I apologized publicly to Jonathan. And I said that I'd let him down, not they'd let him down. I'd let him down, because ultimately it's my responsibility to try and get to the player. So forget the routes that you have to do. If I don't reach the player and he then goes 6 months and, you know, spoke at that, and he got injured during that period of time as well, which put him out for the rest of the season. So think about that. He's been injured. He's had to experience racial abuse. He's gone 6 months in terms of the investigation. He didn't feel he had any outside support. You put all those factors together, you're going to go crazy, aren't you? And you know, he spoke openly and honestly, and I wouldn't even offer an excuse. You know, I've said that, you know, I contacted the club, but I'm not even going to offer excuse on that. And I took that one personally, where I started to question, what is it? What's the point of me being involved in this? What's the point if I'm letting people down? And that's how personally I take things, and that's how things manifest in my own mind, because every time there's an outcome or there's someone that feels let down, I take it personally, you know, because it's my job, it's my day-to-day, it's what I do, as well as, you know, trying to empower players to challenge the whole process of being racially abused. So I walk it and live it every day, unfortunately, you know, and that's probably I wear it on my face, you know, all things like that. It's hard not to feel the pain of an individual, because I felt the pain as well, you know, and I know what it feels like, and I know what the outcomes feel like. So yeah, at any time that they're, you know, they feel like they've been let down, I take it personally. It's not that I jump for joy when, someone's been, you know, has got a banning order. I don't jump for joy. It's just justice. That's justice. If you're going to act like that, for me, that's justice. You know, that's your own fault. You deal with that. But yeah, the other side of it is just pain, just honest pain. And I can't describe that pain enough, because, like I said, it made me question my job and made me question what I was doing.
And going back to that example, it almost very similar to what we talked about at the beginning, kind of the lack of understanding, because it might not have been a malicious thing. Those two people you contacted at Charlton, you said, can you please get me in touch with Jonathan? It might have just slipped their mind. But if they had a real understanding of how important this issue was, and obviously Jonathan took it, it really affected Jonathan in that way. And if they knew, and if that understanding was more widely available, they would have made it a priority. And I suppose that's the door you're knocking on, isn't it? That's the wall you're trying to break through.
But I'm also going to say, Jake, that I don't think there's any excuse for not passing that message on. You know, I could say, you know, it may have slipped your mind. No, I don't think. One person, maybe two. No chance. So I massively felt let down. But listen, I've had my say on it, and that will be where it is. Do you know what I mean? But I'd go through the same process again and again and again. But maybe this time I might decide, you know what, I can't get through in the conventional manner, the manner that I'm supposed to. I'll try and do it another route. And there's always that option, but you try and stick by what you're told to do, because then when you don't do that, people then say, well, look, you haven't done it properly, Troy. You know, so yeah, listen, I honestly felt massively let down, but I'm not the biggest thing in all of this. Jonathan Lecco was the biggest thing, you know, and that was the important thing for me.
You've been with Kick Out for a long time, and of course it's not just with Kick Out.
Seems like forever, Jake.
Seems like forever. I bet it does. How has the prevalence of racism and how it's spoken about changed in your time?
I think it's been hidden a lot now. And when I say that, I say, you know, because social media I've been at Kick It Out for 8 years now. So social media obviously has grown and grown and grown during that period of time. The identities of people have all changed during that period of time. You can be an egg and shout racial abuse now on social media. Do you know what I mean? You can be whatever it is that you want to put in your you could actually put the profile picture of one of your black heroes and yet racially abuse another black player on another team, you know? So the battles and challenges have been more difficult because we're dealing with a whole cyber world and we're not in control of that. You know, the social media companies are in control of that, but apparently a lot of it is freedom of speech. So you can freely speak about people and not really face consequences because you don't actually have to identify yourself on social media, you know? So that has been a challenge. I think the fact that more and more players speak out now helps. Obviously, it puts it in the public domain, it puts it on platforms, it puts it in newspapers, but very quickly, once football's being played again, it's forgotten about. So if you think about Raheem Sterling in December 2018, one of the things I said when Raheem spoke out about the racial abuse that he received at Chelsea was that he'd done that Instagram post, you must remember, and then called out the whole media industry, really. Yeah, that was fine for a short period of time. And people did look at themselves and think, you know what, we need to be more diverse. We need to change the way that we see these things. We need to write in a different style. But that didn't last for everybody, you know. And that wasn't the most iconic moment, by the way, for me. Everyone looks at that moment and say, that was a moment that we changed in our battle against racism. The week before, there was a banana thrown on the pitch at the Emirates, at Aubameyang. That was the most significant moment. And if you ever look back at all the reports in the newspapers, it wasn't a banana that was thrown on the pitch as an act of racism towards a black player. It was a missile thrown on the pitch towards players. Now, if we're not going to call the situations out for what they are, if you was to poll now 2,000 black players, you'd get 2,000 responses. Sorry, 2,000 players of any ilk. You'd get 2,000 responses saying that's an act of racism. So why do the media not call it for what it is? Why are we hiding and calling it sometimes and not calling it other times? So there's the battle and challenges as well. Our media are the biggest things in all of this because they have a narrative that can influence people. And if your narrative says that the act of banana throwing is not a racist incident, then people are going to think that way. And then what they do, they then turn it back round on the individuals. So if I then do an interview and say, you know, that racism at the Emirates, you know, with the banana, no, it's not racism because all the other forms of the media said that it wasn't. You're playing the race card. There's this thing, the race card. I don't know what it is. I honestly, I've looked in my pack of cards and it ain't there. I don't know what the race card is, but there's this generation of people who don't see racism, who are blinded that racism doesn't exist, that then accuse people that have been racially abused or talk about racism with the race card. I haven't seen a race card yet, you know, and because of social media, you'll get people that stick out the card and say, oh, there it goes, there's the race card again. You know, I just think to myself, that's how crazy we live in. So the dynamics of racism haven't changed. It's more in your face now. You know, I have the privilege of working with or work with people from 70s and 80s where it was horrible, you know, and you couldn't do nothing about it. You had no voice. There was no existence. You just had to get on and play. You know, the likes of Cyril Regis, God rest his soul, you know, Brendan Batson, speaking with those guys, just what they had to go through to just play the game that they loved. There was no voice. There was no, just get on with it. That's what they were told. Just now the players don't have to do that. Now the power of, no, why should we get on it? Well, we've got our social media platforms. We've got our influences. We don't have to accept this anymore. But then the only real outcome is when we start putting the real strongest punishments against these people to show them that it's not acceptable within our football stadiums and around our football stadiums. That's the only time people will listen. But every time we've got FIFA and UEFA handing out little paltry fines or closing little parts of stadiums and stuff like that, is the more the acts of racism will continue to flourish, in football. And people say to me, Troy, it's not a football problem, it's a societal problem. We all know it's a societal problem, but it's a societal problem that's in football. And why is it that football can have such a massive influence in all other areas, but you're telling me it can't influence on the topic of racism? So I don't accept that argument as such. It's a societal problem that creeps into our stadiums. Is now, tenfold on our social media platforms, is now being to flourish because the social media companies do not feel it's broken the threshold. So the battle and challenge is a lot more because, like I said, the empowerment of that people get through words behind a keyboard are massive. This country's going through massive amount of changes, Brexit, and I hate to say the word, particularly at this period of time, but Brexit brought a resentment to people from different backgrounds and different cultures. There was this united, this is our country. You don't look like someone from here, you don't sound like someone from here. And there was a wave of that as well. And I saw some of the institutional racism that I used to see. I saw that coming out again, spraying on buildings and stuff like that, get out of our country, and, just language used. And so the challenges are always going to, I kind of talk about it like fashion. I don't know, you guys are not as old as me, so I've seen flares come round about 3 times. Do you know what I mean? It was in vogue. Then you used to wear flares and people say, what are those trousers you're wearing? Then they come back round again. So I've still got a pair in my wardrobe just in case,
Just in case.
So it's like, yeah, exactly. So it's like fashion for me, it's sometimes people think, racism is sexy, isn't it? Let's go and racially abuse a black person, because everyone's doing it at the moment. Like the lad that posted the racial abuse to Ian Wright on Instagram recently. So you do it for notoriety. You do it because who can Ian Wright? I know, I disagreed with him in his top 10 on BBC, whatever it was, and I'm the way I'm going to answer that, I'm going to racially abuse him. Then I'm going to threaten his family. Then I'm going to tell him they're all going to die through COVID. What kind of mental state are you in to actually do that? Sorry, I'm rambling on and not allowing the questions, but I get really pent up about this, as you can tell.
I think what you say about fashion, the fashion of racism, links back to what you were talking about with the media as well, because I think you often find that when it's mainstream media and it covers racism, you'll often find that in the weeks after, they will cover more racism. This happened, and then this happened, here, and this happened here, and then it goes quiet for a period. But that doesn't mean it's not happening. As we're talking from a grassroots, from a Sunday League perspective, and you know better than any of us, it's probably happening week in, week out. But it seems to be the fashion of reporting it, and then it goes away again.
Well, do you know what? I often say that the only way I can evaluate racism at grassroots is the Wild Wild West. For me, it's a haven of hatred. And it's the air. Listen, I understand the top level of the game. Do you know what I mean? Cameras, whatever else, and that's how we deal with it. But the grassroots level is a haven of hatred, because more often than not, you're going to get away with what you say. And I have I was going to say privilege, but it's not a privilege, to see a lot of the reports that come into our organisation on some of that racial hatred, and it blows my mind. So now I'm not shocked by anything else I hear. If I was to share some with you, you'd be going, wow, this, and I'm like that. Yeah, that's just every day. Every Saturday, Sunday, what we get in on a Monday, or people that are taken time to report because they've been so affected by what's happened to them, that it's taken some time to them to put that into words, and I can completely understand that as well. But yet the system says you have to do it within 7 days or 4 days. And you think, well, hold on, if they've suffered from the racial abuse, it may not be easy to live that experience again through words. I'm, like I said, I'm not immune to it, but I knew that when my lads were racially abused on that Sunday, I had to get that in immediately. I had to get my words right, correct on what happened. I put it out on social media. It's the biggest platform to do it. I knew what I'd witnessed. The players, knew what they'd witnessed. They were adamant. I put it out on social. You only need one hit on social media for it to go wildfire. My hit came from Jackie Oakley of the BBC. She pressed retweet, and then it went wildfire. in the end, I had to switch my Twitter off because I wanted to eat and I wanted to try and enjoy some of my family life rather than all these retweets and comments. And listen, that 99.9% of them were in, you know, I mean, can't believe that's still happening in this day and age. Troy, I hope the boys, they were great, you know, but there's the odd one, you know, that's always like, oh, here you go again, and all that kind of stuff, you know. And then somehow members of the opposition obviously had seen the tweet because it'd gone like wildfire, and then accused my players of carrying knives. So 1 minute I'm defending or trying to challenge the very aspect of racism. Now I'm having to say knives. Oh, right, because most of the players are, in a matter of fact, most of the players weren't black. They're black, they're mixed race, they're Portuguese, they're English. Do you know what I mean? I had a mixed group of players. Now we're having to defend because the accusation is that we were carrying knives while we were playing football. Under 15, 16s, who are only interested in winning a game because it means they go top of the league, because they've never been brought up to be like that. But the stereotypical opinion is, well, we're under fire here. Tell you what, let's throw that one out there. They were carrying knives. That's the stuff we got to deal with.